So it was probably about 10 years ago, the promise of a smart home that you can control with your voice or through an app started to surface and bubble up. Over the last 10 years, how have things gone? Where could they go better? And what's the current state of it? That's what Jason Perlow and I are going to talk about today on Jason Squared. So Jason, I know you recently have done a lot of work with your smart home gadgets around the house. Kind of walk us through that and what's going on with smart home in general as of right now.
Well, Jason, I just had a really large construction project in my house complete. I built myself a home like wet bar out of one half of my kitchen. I completely rebuilt that side of the house. Did a lot of wiring. And while I did that, I decided to make some changes to the wiring to other parts of the house so I could make things more automated. I started doing this about, I'm going to say 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. I started experimenting with it by using things like smart plugs
Yeah.
and smart outlets. And I started with Wemos, and then I started branching off into, I bought whatever other cheap smart plugs I could buy. I put them all over the place. I figured, yeah, they're all going to be, this is when Alexa started doing its whole home automations. I want to make everything Alexa compatible and turn things off and on with my voice. And then I started going, adding little things at a time, and actually big things at a time. I went up with smart fans. I went up with smart integrated pool and jacuzzi controllers. I went with a garage opener. Then, of course, we went in with the rings and all that other stuff. And what I started noticing was over time, some of these products would get abandoned. And then you end up having to replace them, or you have to end up, the bridge goes, whatever. Some company decides, yeah, I don't want to make this bridge anymore. I want to make a different bridge. But then suddenly the things attached to the bridge don't work. Yeah. And if you got like 4 or 5 different manufacturers, they don't want to talk to each other anymore. Then you have to start making strategic decisions about standardizing on stuff that you don't think is going to go bad, right? That's really kind of been sort of my challenge lately, Jason.
Yeah, I started with Wemo. I think most people started with Belkin's Wemo line, smart plugs, motion detectors, automation within the app. And those were fine in really, for the time, impressive products, right? We weren't used to being able to control or automate various aspects of our home. And over the years, I too have added various products such as Nest thermostats. I now have 2 of them, and I love using those. Those are one area of the smart home that I actually enjoy and use on a regular, if not daily basis. And then I also branched out into cameras, but those are smart home, but I'm not sure they're like the automation aspect of it. You could do stuff with Ring and Nest Hello doorbell, but I think what we're more talking about here is light bulbs, plugs, light switches, stuff like that. And let me tell you, I'm at my wit's end with all of the smart home stuff. I'm ready to rip all of it out of my house, short of those 2 Nest thermostats, and decide whether or not to even start all over or just give up on it as a whole. The amount of work and troubleshooting and, a light bulb in my garage that is timed to go on every night at 6 o'clock and turn off at 9 o'clock. Some nights I walk out there and it's not even on. And so then I have to spend 20 minutes troubleshooting a light bulb when flicking a switch is much easier. I'm so over the lack of interoperability between the products. I do enjoy the new trend of going to Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connections only and getting rid of hubs and bridges, like Philips Hue bridge and stuff like that. I don't want to add more stuff to my network. I just want stuff to connect and work. So that's where I'm at with it. But I know you just did a whole bunch of stuff with Lutron in your house as part of that wet bar scenario or construction project you have.
Yeah. So Jason, I recently started implementing Lutron Cassetta, which is a great system. It is a bridge-based system. They do use a wireless standard that is different from Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and also the 2 other competing standards, Zigbee and Z-Wave.
Yeah.
And so you got at least these 3 or 4 of these pseudo Bluetoothy type of standards, low energy, long distance communication protocols for things like wireless switches and smart plugs, right? And I think Cassetta and Lutron is here to stay for a while. I think they're a stable company. They're a company that building contractors use. They're not really as much, they are a consumer product in the sense they've been making light switches and things for a million years, right? So I think they're a reliable company. I think that standard is here to stay. But at the same time, I'm still stuck at the point where I have to use a different company for smart plugs because Lutron doesn't make a smart plug. They're really fixated on lighting controls, fan controls, and things like that. So that's been challenging. to try to consolidate it all into one app is really a hard thing to do, because if you start to make a collection of different things over time, they're all going to live in like their own little apps.
It's the
And
most
really
frustrating part of it.
the consolidation point is actually Alexa, which is not a bad app, but I'm not crazy about the way it's laid out. But I mean, it is
No,
what it is.
it's horribly laid out, and
It,
setting up routines and trying to figure out and learn the cadence of how you have to speak to a smart assistant. And
yeah,
give
how
it
do you
the
call? What do you call a device so that when you speak to it, you remember what you called it, so that it doesn't say, "What do you mean?" Whatever.
Yeah,
At, 2
instead of
o'clock in the morning,
teaching
like,
Alexa or Google Assistant on how to recognize what we're telling it, we have to learn how to speak to the computer, which is a frustrating experience, especially for me, a family of 5, when you tell someone, "Oh, just tell Alexa to turn off the light," and they have no clue what to say.
well, and if you have multiple Alexas, right, you kind of want it to understand about the room that you're currently in, that you're talking to, right? So it doesn't really have that intelligence to understand that when you mean turn on the fan, you don't mean to turn on the fan in the bedroom when you're in the living room, right? You want it to you don't want to say turn on ceiling fan in living, that's just craziness.
Yeah, you sound like a robot at that point.
Yeah, and
And I've used several different products like Samsung SmartThings that have combined a lot of different smart home products into one app. But the
yes,
problem is it only does that at the basic level. So you get like maybe 1 or 2 core features, using Ring as an example. You get a live view of your doorbell. But outside of that, if you want to adjust motion alerts, if you want to change
agreed.
the doorbell ringtone, you're going to have to dive into the Ring app anyway. So what is the point of investing in a SmartThings Hub to try and consolidate everything when you're not getting the full experience? I don't know if it's coming through, but I'm
I can see that you're
frustrated.
Jason, and I gotta say, I do really like the ability to automate and schedule and things like that. I do like that aspect of it, because I do have a lot of lighting fixtures in this house, and I like to be able to say, good night, bam, it all goes out. I don't have to run out to to go turn something or go looking for something to turn off, which I think is valuable. And I also think under certain scenarios, here in South Florida, we have a lot of retired people in their 70s and their 80s that are not as mobile or doesn't have as freedom of movement. Right? Some of these people might be bound to wheelchairs and such, or use walkers and things. I haven't gotten there yet, but I do know some people in my sphere of influence that really do like having Alexa be able to tell a light switch to turn off if they can't get up and do it if they're lying down in the bedroom or something. So I think that is helpful. What I have found is difficult is that if we make investments in certain types of light fixtures. Now, I've noticed, for example, I was just looking for floodlights yesterday. We did the floodlights on my pool deck, and a lot of them are integrated LEDs. Like, you can't buy bulbs for them,
Yes.
right? And if that thing goes out, you have to replace the whole fixture.
And they're expensive.
They're also not dimmable. So if you attach a smart controller to one of these LEDs, they may start blinking, right? So I actually had to go looking for a stupid, a dumb flood fixture that I could connect to the cassetta dimmer, which with manual, regular dimmable Philips LEDs, right? So basically you have to use stupid fixtures if you're going to use smart lighting controls, which is, something you have to be aware of with some of these things. So, and you don't want to put a hue inside a smart lighting switch, because that's also counterintuitive, right? So like you have to make strategic decisions about what things you're going to buy, because otherwise things aren't going to match correctly when you do this.
Yeah, exactly. And who's going to, besides you or I, who live and breathe technology every day, who is going to go through the painstaking process of figuring out what is compatible with what, and which dumb things need to go with which smart things? And is this Zigbee or Z-Wave? And does that work with Amazon's new Bark or whatever it is protocol they're going to use for Ring's dog finder? Like, even Apple's HomeKit, which was supposed to have streamlined all of this for Apple users, is still to this day a mess. And it's getting better, I'll admit. To your point, being able to say goodnight to something and have a whole bunch of stuff turn off in your door lock, that's one thing I do use on a regular basis. And it mostly works. There are nights when it's like, why didn't the light turn off?
Right.
And so you have to get up and manually go turn the light off. And there's no rhyme or reason for it. But HomeKit is standardizing on Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connections only. More companies are doing that as well. I think that'll help alleviate some of the problems, because then it's just, hey, if it's on your network, here's how it's controllable. and you can go from there. There's a
It
company.
should just work like we expect Wi-Fi to work for the most
Exactly.
part, right? I mean, when you buy a product and it says Wi-Fi, it doesn't say only works with Netgear, only works with Linksys, only works with, D-Link.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi is Wi-Fi. We expect, and we also expect Bluetooth to be Bluetooth for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we have these in Wi-Fi. We have these substandards like G versus N versus AC versus whatever. But we know that there's a certain minimal connection protocol that it will work, right?
Yeah, it's
Maybe
not
not at
creating
the
a network
top
just for a
speed.
Mac, right?
No, you're not changing. Yeah, exactly. So, but that is essentially what we're dealing with home automation
Right.
is these competing wireless standards, competing connection protocols, competing apps, competing cloud services, right?
Yeah.
When we're dealing with like Amazon versus Google versus Apple, it's getting ridiculously complicated. And I've begun the process of trying to simplify by going with Lutron. I would like to stick with just Lutron if I can, but I know that's not a realistic goal because things get acquired organically. You buy stuff and it's in your house, right? And then you have to accommodate it somehow.
Yeah, well, even Google tried consolidating everything into Works with Nest, right? You wanted to connect other
Oh, that's been a disaster.
and now they're transitioning over everyone to a Google account instead of their Nest account. I have thus far resisted the change. I've been able to keep my Nest account intact and not transition it over. Although I will say I have a smart display right next to my desk, and I have a Nest Hello doorbell. And the last 2 weeks, all of a sudden, when my doorbell rings, it no longer shows up on my display. I haven't even thought about taking the time to troubleshoot it because I'm over it. Like, it should continue to work. And I'm afraid they're going to make me transition my account.
The Google thing really put a bad taste in my mouth, and it's broken 2 of my apps already. It broke Lutron. Lutron does not have an ability to connect to Works with Nest anymore at all. And also my Haiku fans, my big ass fans, and I have 2 of those big ass fans in my house. Those no longer work at all with Google. So it's kind of like their developers have just suddenly been left in the lurch, and now they have to reprogram their stuff to make it work. And some of them are just saying to hell that we don't want to work with Google at all because they just.
And you can't blame them for that. I mean, their customers have lost capabilities. Users or the companies have, the customers have. It's not a good experience. And yet Google had promised this would be a great all-in-one way of combining everything and just trust us with it. And obviously that didn't turn out the way we had all hoped. So going forward, what needs to happen with home automation and smart home devices?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of initiatives to try to standardize this stuff, but I still think that we're going to be sitting in these towers of vendors that have their own ecosystem, just like we see with cell phones and app stores and things like just like Apple versus Android and Amazon versus everybody else. I think we're still going to be seeing that for some time to come, unless there's somebody that's extremely powerful in the space that has such a huge market share, which doesn't really exist in the home, consume lighting. I mean, Lutron's got some capabilities. GE's got some capabilities. Jazzco. But none of these guys have such a dominating market share that they can influence the entire industry. So it'd be great if they could all get together and say, let's agree to do something, but I'm not hopeful about it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. What needs to happen in the future is one standard comes out of all of this, maybe 2, and those hubs, like Abode is a company that's been wanting me to test their hub, and I've resisted because I don't want to install another thing in my house. Is get a company or 1 or 2 companies to create a hub that actually works across all the standards and provides the full functionality. But is that going to happen? There's not a chance. Not as long as Apple and Google and Amazon have their foot in the door and are messing with the water to try and create proprietary technology so it only works within their ecosystem, or it kind of sort of works outside of their ecosystem, but you get more in it. If you're an Amazon user, like, I don't see any of this, the headaches that it causes and the incompatibility issues going away anytime soon. There are some open source projects. There's a Raspberry Pi home automation project that I was looking at earlier this morning that kind of combines everything into one interface that you control yourself. I don't know, maybe that's the answer. I really don't know, but I don't have any high hopes for a year from now us to record another video and say how great smart home products are. And we haven't even touched on the security implications that they put
No.
into our own home networks and bring inside our homes, whether it's a camera, a smart lock, or even just a plug. There's tons of security implications there that I've had a hard time justifying lately.
Yeah, Jason, I totally get it. And you know what? I've recently spent a lot of money on this stuff. I bought like 10 of those Caseta smart dimmers. So I've basically replaced every manual switch in my house.
Wow.
They're all controllable. I got them scheduled in groups. I got a lot of cool macros and stuff going, and it's working. My fear is in 3 to 5 years,
yeah,
is Lutron going to make a change that's saying, hey, we're coming out with a new hub, and suddenly all your switches aren't working? Or yeah. I'm hoping that that's not the case. I'm expecting, they'll probably upgrade their hub in a couple of years, whatever. If they add new products down the line, I just want to make sure that I hope I haven't made a bad decision as to what I've done.
Backwards compatible, I guess, right?
Right.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You have to make a good decision here, and unfortunately, you have to put all your money in one basket and hope that the company is able to survive the upcoming technological changes and advances that maybe they have an idea of what's around the corner but don't truly understand or comprehend. So yeah, it's a frustrating mess, I think, is what you said at one point, and that's a prime way of explaining it. And I think that's probably a good good spot to stop. Yeah. All right. For Jason Perlow, I'm Jason Cipriani. This is Jason Squared. Make sure to check us out at zdnet.com.